So this week's virtue is fortitude. And another word for that is courage. And it doesn't just mean being a daredevil, okay? This is a virtue. So we have to think about this in terms of what does it mean about us trying to imitate God, trying to be more like God in our holiness and our virtue. I always like to be able to picture things, and I think word association, those mnemonic devices, that's one of my favorite things. So when I think of fortitude, I think of a big fort, like from the olden days, this big wooden structure. You ever go to Fort Ransom, or not Fort Ransom, what's the one by Bismarck? Whatever the name of that is. You know what I'm talking about. But I picture that. And there's strength in that, right? Why would somebody build a fort around something? Why would we build a fortress around a city? It's to protect it. And so fortitude is having that strength, that wall, so to speak, that we build that protects the goodness that we have inside from the evil outside forces. And we know good and well how many evil forces are trying to attack us every day. Evil is always trying to bring down good. Think about Satan. He knew God and still rebelled against him. And something that I really started to think about with this, God threw him out of heaven because of his evil choices. Fortitude for me, as I've been thinking about this last night and this morning, is making me very uneasy. We have a responsibility to stand for the good. And if we don't think that hell is a reality, we need to go back and refresh ourselves with the Bible and with the story of our faith. Our Catholic faith is the truth. It is based on good. And Satan is always doing everything he can to pull us away from that. And the thing that will keep us next to God is fortitude. It is the basis of every other virtue. Without fortitude, without strength and courage for the good, we don't really have much hope. And here's a wake-up call, hopefully for you, because it was for me. We are weak. We're a bunch of babies. And doesn't the devil love that? How easily swayed are we? We don't want to have our feelings hurt. We don't want to have somebody say something mean about us. We are too afraid many times to stand for the good out of the fear of what somebody else thinks. Are we afraid of what the devil thinks of us? I've had some very sobering inner conversations in the last 24 hours with fortitude. How willing am I to stand up for my faith in a culture that really is trying to silence us about everything? Because if you say something, if you disagree with somebody, if you stand for the truth, they will cancel you. And we are very worried about what everybody else thinks of us. Are we more worried about what everybody else thinks of us? Are we more worried about that than what God thinks of us? That's a very sobering thought. Now, does it mean we have to run around and just say things and tear everybody down? No, we're talking about a virtue here. standing up for what is right and good and true. And that can happen right in the classroom. When somebody is doing something that is not appropriate, we want to fit in. We want to kind of join in just enough so that we're part of the group. But with fortitude, we would choose the right thing. And we would stand up for it, not worrying about what somebody else says about us. Fortitude's tough. It means you have to go against the crowd a lot of times. Society continues, and I attribute this to the devil, continues to wear away at the truth, continues to wear away at what relationships should look like, the purpose of God's creation, which is so incredibly planned out. Everything works so perfectly. But our culture wants to say, well, that doesn't really matter. And if it matters, well then, you're not a very good person. And man, does that make us clam up, right? But fortitude has to come from a place where we know the truth. We know what is right and what is wrong. And let me tell you, you guys, culture doesn't want us to think that anything is right or wrong. There is right and there is wrong. And we have to have our beliefs in that firmly set so that we can stand up against it and be willing to say something when it comes to that point. People that were saints many times were martyred for their faith. Holy fortitude. Would any of us in our culture today and how weak we have become and how big a crybabies we've become, would we take death to stand up for our beliefs? We won't even take an unkind word. This is a very, very difficult virtue because we have to go against a lot of what comes at us from the outside. And the evil forces are very good about word choice and can make it sound convincing. We have to be firm in our beliefs, and we have to be willing to be on the outskirts of a group that maybe we want to be included in. And we have to be willing to give that up for God. And we're going to have to face those decisions at some point, right? You know me and my imaginary conversation I have with God so many times, and boy, does it straighten me up for a minute. But we're human, right? I need this conversation day after day after day. Mrs. Yatskis, how did you stand up for the truth? How did you stand up for those babies who were killed in the womb that I created out of love? Sure, you prayed for them. What did you do about it? Where is my fortitude? Where is my ability to say, when I am questioned about abortion, stop killing the babies? I'm done with the fancy word choice. Stop. When I am seeing things that are happening, someone's being picked on, where was my fortitude? Stop being mean. Stop disrespecting. That's a hard ask, because sometimes we don't want to come across like that. But when I am standing in front of God Almighty, there's only one answer I want to give when he asks me what I did to stand up for the truth.